am so excited to have Kristine Munro in the podcast. Kristine, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Ina. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. And I can't wait to really dive deep into your story. But before we do, can you please tell everybody what is it that you do right now and who you help right now?
Well, right now, in this very moment, I am the founder of the Illume Collective, which is a community for women entrepreneurs here in Denver to connect on a deeper level, illuminate their light, and do the things they are meant to do right now. And I am also the host of the Pivot to Passion podcast, because I've pivoted my way to discover my purpose and passion.
And we're going to get into all of that. But first, can you please tell everybody, way in the beginning, where were you born? Where did you grow up?
So I am originally from Canada. I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta. And my parents are immigrant parents. My mom is from the Philippines and my dad was from Hong Kong. And so I grew up in Canada around Canadians and just growing up in a town where basically there was not a lot of people of color, and grew up a lot just trying to find out who I was because I wasn't really fitting in anywhere.
Is that something that you remember being different from the other kids?
Oh yeah, because I was in a school where it was primarily Caucasian people. I was treated differently because they didn't know or see anybody else that looked different from them. And so because when people don't understand or they're not used to seeing it, I think you're treated differently. So I did not have friends for the first few years of school. I was bullied as a kid. And then when there was another Asian boy came into our class, people used to make fun of us that we were like boyfriend and girlfriend because we looked the same. So it's all those kinds of things. And like me just trying, as humans, we all just want to fit in. And me not being able to fit in with the kids of my school, I think just really played a huge part into my confidence back then. And then my dad had put me in, he wanted me to learn Chinese because my parents both speak different languages. So we were speaking English at home. And so he wanted my sister and I to learn Chinese. So he put us in a Sunday school to learn Chinese, but really it wasn't a Chinese school. It was Sunday school with Chinese kids. So they already knew how to speak Chinese. So when I was put into this classroom with them and they already knew how to speak, I didn't know how to fit in either because I didn't speak the language that they were speaking.
Yeah.
So I was going through this hard time where, okay, I don't fit in with the kids at school and I don't fit in with the kids that look like me. So then I was really trying to figure out where is my place on this earth where I didn't fit in anywhere. So there are a lot of memories back then that I remember of what I went through with children, and it, yeah, but with anything, it was like I had to build up my confidence through life skills and life lessons and experiences in order to learn the lessons that I've learned along the way.
At which point do you start to kind of develop a sense for what you want to do with life? Like, what did you think your life was going to be like when you were like middle school, high school years, before college? What did you think you were going to do when you grew up?
So I didn't really know, but I think it's because I did tell my parents when I was in middle school that I wanted to be a model. I wanted to make fashion. I wanted to do fashion shows. Like I love doing videos of like wearing clothes. And I remember my dad told me, and they're only doing the best that they can. And they came from like poverty and said, you need to do something more practical with your life and you need to go to business school and you need to do this. And my dad was an accountant. So I ended up going to school to be an accountant. So there was that glimmer of like, I do want to do this, but then when it gets shot down and says, well, this is what success looks like, and success looks like you need to go to business school, you need to do all these things. So I went to college and I ended up being a accountant at first, and then I was in finance, and then I was doing commercial finance, real estate, and then I was a developer and I was building custom homes. So I did that for like 20 years, that career, in a span of 10 years climbing the corporate ladder, and then 10 years having my own business in real estate, like building homes. And all the while having all the things that, looks good on the outside. And I had what quote unquote success was. I wasn't feeling fulfilled inside, and I felt lost, and I felt like I know I'm meant for more, but then I was always felt like I was guilty for wanting more than what I already had.
Mhm.
So I just was like, but I don't know what that is, because you live a life so long of not knowing or doing things for other people to make them happy. I didn't know what I wanted. And so it wasn't until we moved to the US, my husband had a job opportunity here in Denver 5 years ago and said, like, do you want to start? Do you want to move? Do you want to move and start from scratch? And I was like, yes, because I was not liking my career. I felt like it was soul sucking, but I just didn't know what to do. And so this gave me like the push to like get out there, start from scratch in my 40s, mind you. And it was scary, but I was like, I'll just figure it out, until I did, until I didn't have my career anymore after 20 years. And I realized how much I had attached my identity to that.
Mm.
And I felt lost, like really lost. And then I went into like a really dark place during COVID, also like starting from scratch, not really knowing what to do with my life. And then COVID happened and we're trapped inside. And it was a really dark place for me, but I had to really go within, and I didn't know what I needed. And luckily, when you start to follow breadcrumbs, I was like, I'm going to start a new business. Nothing was working. I hired a business coach for what I thought would be business strategies. Like, that's what you think you need, like all these things, even though I had been doing business for 20 years. And she taught me things that I didn't even know that I would need. And so she told me on our very first call that I want you to start meditating. And I was like, what does that have to do with my business? But it had everything to do with my business, to start getting quiet with my thoughts and tap into myself and what I wanted. And so I went on this whole path of self-discovery. And in that path of self-discovery is when I started to follow breadcrumbs of intuitively what I wanted to start doing without fear of like failing, or that it was the final thing I had to pick. I just kept pivoting and trying different things.
Before we get into that,
Yes.
because you just skipped over 20 years.
Okay.
You just very expertly skipped me over to
Okay.
the pivotal moment.
Yes.
Because there is something that you talk about in your own podcast that I feel like it really made me go like, wait a minute, I want to know more about that. And if it's okay with you,
Yeah.
I'd like to open the door to talking about your first marriage,
Oh, yeah.
if that is all right.
Yes. Let's
You
go back
guys,
there.
you guys were together for about 14 years,
Mhm.
and this was basically your very first pivot before you even left the career, before you even left anything. This was the first glimmer in your life where you said to yourself, I think I need something more and I'm going to make a big
Mm.
change for it. And I know that everybody right now who is maybe in a relationship or they're feeling the same things, I'm like,
Mhm.
people need to hear this from a
Yeah.
practical sense. Like, what did that take? So I'd love to know, to start from the beginning. Where did you guys meet?
Yeah. So I was 18 when I met my first husband, and we both worked at a grocery store.
Nice.
And yeah. And when you're kids, and it's like it was my first job, and well, not my first, but like my first big job.
Right.
And I met him, and of course I just wanted to dive into getting into a serious relationship at the age of 18. In hindsight, when I look back, I'm like, and my parents were like, why are you settling down so young? And I just wanted
Oh,
to rebel.
I would have expected the opposite. I would have expected like, hey, 22 is the year to get married. Let's do this. I would
Yeah.
have expected a completely different reaction.
Yeah. So we got into a serious relationship right away when I was 18. And what happened was we grew apart I was with him for a total of 14 years.
Mhm.
And he was an amazing man, like so funny and so good and all the things, but there was something missing. I knew in my gut that something wasn't aligned, something wasn't right. And as we were growing and getting older together, I had these big dreams and I had so many like hopes and aspirations. And he was like, why can't you just be happy with what we have now? Like, he didn't want to grow. He didn't want all these things. And so I was like, well, it's hard to keep growing if somebody doesn't really want to grow with you or
Yeah.
doesn't see your vision.
Mhm.
And so, but because he was so amazing, he was so nice, he was caring, kind, I felt guilty to leave him because I And I do 14 years, like I care about him,
Yeah.
but I'm like, what do I do? So for a long time, I was like, I don't know what to do. I kept convincing myself that I'm the one that's crazy for wanting to leave, that like, why would I leave something so good? And finally, I reached a breaking point, and it was when I was going to Vegas a lot with my girlfriend, especially like after 21, you could go and do all the things. And I didn't go all most of my 20s. It was like when I started hitting 30, we started going a lot because I had missed out on all my 20s of having fun because I settled down. And then we were going a lot. And this is me trying to escape. And when I remember this was the pivotal moment when I finally decided to do it, is we were waiting for our flight and we were in a pool, and I was like, I do not want to go home. Like the last thing I wanted to do was get on a flight to go home. And I was like, this is wrong. I'm like, I should not want to go home. Like home is where is your place, right? So I was
Right.
like, if I don't even want to go home, like something's wrong. So I'm like, that's it. I need to go home and fix this. I need to finally, because now I know it's not fair to him if I'm in this relationship and I'm not fully present and want to be in it. So that's when I came home and I told him that I didn't want to be married anymore. So that was really hard because then you're leaving something that you're used to, something safe, all those things. So even though I knew I wanted to leave him, even that first year, I would say the first year was really hard. Like lots of crying, lots of like second guessing myself and thinking that I should go back, and because you're heading into the unknown. So it wasn't until, after a year, I started to like really feel comfortable being alone.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like help other women like if you're feeling stuck or settling in a relationship, then it's scary, but you don't need to. Because then I ended up having friends that were, just settling in their relationships.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it doesn't have to be this way. I know it's hard to leave, but it's so much more amazing on the other side. And I was already saying this before I had met my new husband. So when I was single, I was like, I felt so good to be single again. Took a year, but it felt great. And so I needed to be in that place to like find myself, another version of myself, to be good with myself without a partner. And then and then I had met my husband a year later. So it was like 2 years in between that I met my husband now.
For anybody who's listening who may be totally relating to what you're saying, like, wait a minute, turning up the volume, like, is that me? Is that my relationship? What would you say were, besides feeling like you don't want to go home, which is kind of like a big one, what do you think were some signs that those our listeners should be watching out for if it's time to reconsider a relationship?
Yeah. So, okay, for one, I knew you know deep down inside because I knew, but I even knew before we got married. So we were together for 14 years, but we were only married for 5,
Mhm.
the last 5. And I remember we were together for already 9 years, and we of course got married because that's the thing you do after, 9 years, you should be married by now. So even before the wedding, I had a gut feeling that it wasn't right.
Mm.
But I convinced myself otherwise, like, oh, I'm just having cold feet and I can't cancel a wedding. There's 150 people coming, um, all those things. So I already knew. I knew before we got married. Now, in hindsight, looking back, it's just that you will convince yourself of all the reasons why you should stay. He's a good man. He's, caring, and he's funny, and he's all these things. There's nothing wrong with him. So why would I leave? But if you have a gut that doesn't make sense, like, it doesn't make sense logically why I would leave if you were to just look at like external things. But I knew inside that it didn't feel right.
What did your family think throughout, like,
Mm.
as you were considering this and maybe like knocking on some doors, asking for help and guidance? What was everybody around you telling you?
Yeah, this is where it was really hard because even though in the very beginning my parents didn't think he was good enough for me because he wasn't ambitious enough as me, and he didn't have the job that they thought was good enough, I rebelled at the time and was like, well, no, like I love him and I'm going to marry him. And I hate to like say that they were right, that they knew for me, but at the same time, I thought that they'd be more supportive when I said that I wanted to leave him. But my parents come from a culture where you just stay and they care about more about what other people think, and that divorce is a bad thing. And so when I told them that I wanted to divorce him, my mom did not was not digging it. She did not approve because she
Mhm.
was worried about what everybody else would think, not caring about what I feel. So
Yeah.
that was really hard for me because I did not have their support.
Thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey with us. I know that it really can't have been easy. So you spend this year, kind of a tough year, right? You for the following year you meet your new husband. Um, at which point, like in relation to where we are in this story, are we talking about? Actually, at which point did you have your son? At which point did you start having
Oh,
kids?
yeah. Oh, my son came way later. So, my son came in 2017, and I had met my new husband in 2011.
Okay, so
So,
this is
way
like
later.
so
Yeah.
wait, like because you guys moved to Denver.
Yeah. So we had
Like
my daughter in Calgary, and then we moved to Denver when my son was 1 years old.
yeah. Okay, so you guys move
Mhm.
and you're here like, okay, I'm not doing this real estate development anymore. What am I supposed to do with my life? So
Yeah.
land us right there. What was paint a picture for what your quote unquote business, like the budding parts of your
Yeah.
business were looking like at this point? Social
Yeah.
media presence, what were you doing? What were you thinking?
Yeah. Okay. So even so, when I knew that we were moving, like right before we were moving, I knew that I was going to be doing something different, and I didn't know what that was. At first, I was like, okay, my kids are small. When we moved, Leo was going to be 1 and Lauren was 4. So I was like, I need to find something to do while I'm at home because
Okay.
he was little. And so it's like following the breadcrumbs. And then I remember following Create the Love. I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, but at the
No.
time, he's like a relationship expert on social media. But at the time, so I went to elementary, junior high, and high school with him. And before we had moved, he had built this big Instagram thing. And at the time, he had like 10,000 followers. And I was like, ooh, I want to do something that he's doing online in influencing in some way, and or making an impact in some way, but I don't know with what. So because of that, I started to take somebody was doing like an Instagram like workshop before
Mhm.
I left. So I went to go join it. It was like a food blogger, and she was like going to tell everybody how to do Instagram. So I just started like doing things like that. And then when we moved here, my girlfriend was like, and I had no idea what I was going to do, but I think I just was open to like whatever comes. And a girlfriend called me and she's like, hey, you're at home. And I know you want to stay home with your small kids. And I know you love makeup. And I know you love, skincare. Do you want to join me in this network marketing company for clean beauty? It's called Beauty Counter. And I was like, sure. Cause I like, just following the things that bring me joy. And I'm like, I like makeup. I like skincare. Sure, I'll do it. Cause I wanted to be on social media and I wanted to be at home with my
Mhm.
kids. So
Mhm.
I did that for 2 years until it wasn't working for me. Well, I think it just morphed into I was so studying social media so much that my teams were like asking me to teach them workshops on how to market yourself on social media.
Right.
So that morphed into doing a course in social media. And then I started doing that for all entrepreneurs. And then it morphed into, from that, it morphed into like a lot of real estate people because they knew I was doing real estate before. They're like, well, I don't want you to teach me how to do social media. I want you to do it for me because I don't have time to do my social media. So I created an Instagram agency where I was managing social media accounts
All
for real
right.
estate professionals. So yeah, one thing just kept leading to another. How I got to what I'm doing now is that while at the same time that I was doing those things, I needed community. I knew that, and I was traveling to Scottsdale to go to Powerhouse stuff all the time. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't keep traveling to find friends. I need to like build it here. So
Right.
I just started with like, I like to eat. So I'm going to create a brunch and gather women together. And then it kind of just built from there.
I want to know about the social media agency because I feel like a lot of us, once we start learning about something, we're like, okay, then let's go ahead and teach it. And it just kind of like springboards from there,
Hmm. Hmm.
which I think is fascinating. What were what was working for you having the agency, and what wasn't? What started to like make you itch and be like, okay, maybe this is not it either? Tell me
That
the things that
is
were working and the ones that weren't.
that is such a good question. Okay, so what was working was when I was trying to build up my network marketing company and I was trying to build up the course, I wasn't making a lot of revenue. It wasn't like anything that was significant for me to like live on. And so I was like, okay, I need to fall back onto something that I know. So that's why I went back to like an agency for real estate, because that's the business that I knew. See, sometimes when you're going to something different, you fall back onto things that were comfortable for you.
Right.
So I ended up getting clients quickly, and they were paying a lot of money for management of their social media. And I had a lot of clients. So what was working was that now I had a sustainable income. I was making good money. And I was like, this is amazing, because I wasn't making money for a bit there and I needed that. As we kept going, what wasn't working for me, it was like, I'm still doing the thing that was unfulfilling for me for 20 years, which is in this industry and like hustling for money and all those things. So I'm like, what am I doing? Because yeah, again, I'm falling back to the making money part where I'm not fulfilled.
Right.
So I knew, and at the same time that I had the Instagram agency, I was starting the Illume Collective as a side thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, the agency was sucking my soul. The Illume Collective was where I felt lit up. It brought me joy, even though I wasn't making income on that side.
And it was called Business Bosses Who Brunch back
That's
then,
right.
which is a
Yes.
great title, by the way, because I do love brunch too. I'm like,
Yes, it
brunch,
started
you
with
sign me
brunch.
up,
So that
right?
was the name. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I need to follow what's fulfilling me regardless of the money, and the money will come. So I had to make another big pivotal decision that if I'm going to go all in on the thing that I want to do, I need to let go of that. So here's another situation where I let go of the agency, the one thing that was bringing me revenue, and leave it to do the thing that I wanted to do where I wasn't making any money. So it was last year, I quit. I gave all my clients away to other people, and I went all in on the Illume Collective. And then
Yeah.
since then, it's like I'll never go back. It's like now I just keep building on this community and have different offers and different things for different people at different stages. And it's truly what's so fulfilling to me. And now the business is growing because I just followed my heart.
Let's talk a little bit about what the business model of a community is, because you started out saying, I just want people to be talking to each other. Your first event that you did, you're like, we're just going to do it at cost. We're just going to like get
Yeah.
everybody to pay for how much the brunch costs, and let's
Mhm.
just do this. Can you walk us through how you started to ideate what the business model was going to be for this
Mm.
community? Where was the
Yeah.
money going to come from?
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. So when I first started to do the brunches, I'm like, as long as I break even, like I'm happy. And then I started talking to other event planners and other community builders, like, how are you monetizing your communities? And so there's so many different ways. And I think what's important, because a lot of women now come up to me and they say, like, how do I monetize? How do I start? Especially when they're like, starting a community or starting a podcast, that's the first thing that they want to do is like, how do I monetize it? But I'm like, okay, let's come from a place of like, why are you doing this first? And there's so many ways to monetize, and what really works for you, like, because everyone's different. And that's why I'm always really big on following your intuition on what you want to do. And so for me, it ended up being a membership based type community. That's the business structure. So we make our money on monthly revenue from memberships, and I offer a lot of different ways for the women to connect inside the community. But then on top of the membership, now I have a mastermind, and I have other like pay as you go for workshops. And so it's just a combination of a bunch of different things. And then I have a big event at the end of the year. But if anybody knows big events, that's not where the money comes in.
Yeah.
Definitely not where the money comes in. It's just a lot of upfront costs, and maybe you'll break even, or maybe you'll lose money. So it's yeah. So I think, and it's still evolving and it's still growing, because we're still in this year, at the end of this year will be our second year, and it's still evolving.
So here's a question about this. If somebody is looking to monetize a community that they have, creating all those offers, like that sounds great. That's something they can go and do. They can offer these workshops and create the courses and create the monetization. But one big thing that I have seen you do that you do really, really well is the whole visibility aspect. Now, I don't mean audience growth. I mean putting yourself out there and building your authority out there in many other ways, not just to your audience, but to other people's audience. One example is just being on this podcast. Another example, going and speaking in conferences. I would love to know, at which point did you realize, wow, if I'm going to be building authority and growing this business, I really need to put myself out there like in overdrive. Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
had a really big fear of being seen and speaking in public. And so another memory that keeps coming up is that when I was in college, and I don't know if some of your college classes were like this, they're like auditoriums.
Right.
And I remember speaking on a project that I had to go up and talk about an article, and froze on stage because I didn't know the answer that the teacher was asking me in front of hundreds of people. And that traumatized me at that point. So I did not like public speaking. And I always said, like, I don't want to public speak, but I think my desire to like make an impact and help women in our community, I was like, okay, I could speak and practice at these, but I never had the desire to public speak to other things. It wasn't until I started seeing them in my meditations, I started seeing like myself doing like big stadiums, and I'm like, why do I have this vision? Like, I don't want to do this, but your soul knows what you're meant to do. And I just started doing a lot of work on, why does my nervous system feel unsafe when I'm speaking in front of people? And it took a lot of work with like healers and therapists and all those kinds of things to really step into my own, to be able to show up and speak. And now that I claim it, and now that I say, okay, I am meant to speak and make an impact, then those opportunities come into my lap where
Yeah.
I get asked to. So I think it's just not that it was planned that way. It's just like when you follow your heart and your soul's purpose and get quiet with your thoughts, it just starts to happen the way it's supposed to.
How do you feel about public speaking now?
Great, wonderful. I love it. I thrive on it now. It's definitely a switch from like the very beginning, where I had to take a beta blocker on our very first brunch where it regulated my heart rate. And now I absolutely love it, because now I'm in a place where I can stand up there and not be in my head of like, oh my God, am I going to freeze? Oh my God, what are those people thinking of me? Now I stand in a place of, how can I serve? And what messages do these people need to hear that's going to come through me?
If somebody's listening right now who's like, I stage fright might as well be my middle name, but I really want to be more visible.
Yeah.
Give us a couple of tips for them to like get started becoming more comfortable.
Yeah. So before I had a podcast and before I was really speaking, I knew that one thing that really made me uncomfortable on social media was IGTV. It's now, I don't, just called lives now.
Just live.
I hated them because I was like, oh my God, like now it's like live and now I feel all like fumbly and uncomfortable. And so if you actually, they're still up on my Instagram. If you guys look at the very old ones, I committed to doing 2 a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. The first one was like Insta Tip Tuesdays. And on Thursdays, it was Mindset Thursday. And I would come on the same time every 2 weeks, every 2 days, and I would just go live. The very first ones are awful, cringeworthy. I would like, but now my friends say, like, if you're not cringing at your content from 2 years ago, are you even growing? So I would go on them because in the purpose of practicing, I knew that if I just kept showing up, I could practice and get used to it until it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. So that's how I started. So do something small that's like uncomfortable for you and practice it over and over again until it's not, until you can step into the next thing.
I love it.
So I wouldn't
So
just say like, oh, just go on a stage and rock it.
just go and figure it out. Just put
Yeah.
yourself out there and just figure it out.
Yeah.
So what is your big dream now? Like, what are you going for? What is your big, hairy, scary vision?
Yeah, I think that now, even though I do speak to like many of the communities around here, I do picture myself on like bigger keynote stages, which is crazy because it's not something that I really ever wanted. It's because I see that vision, and that's where I see myself. And I was blocking myself for a while there, saying like, oh, I don't want to do that because I don't want to travel and be away from my kids. But it was a block of mine. I learned that at Powerhouse of like, it's a safety shield. My kids were a safety shield. But that is one of them. And just be able to help, like truly the reason why the whole purpose of the stage is not just me on a stage. There's a purpose behind it. And the purpose is to create a bigger impact for more people to follow their heart and lead with the light that's in them. Because for so long, 40 years, I did life without leading that way. And now that I'm on the other side, I really, truly feel called to help other women step into that, be authentic, and really come from a place of authenticity and shining their true light, because that's where you become magnetic. That's where you can make an impact when you come from a place that's truly you.
Yeah. And on that note, can you tell us a little bit more about the Illum Collective? Who is it really for? And what can people expect when they join?
Yes. So the Illum Collective is it. We say that it's women in business or women entrepreneurs, but really it's women who have a big dream. So we have women all the time that are still in their corporate job that say, I'm not an entrepreneur yet, but I do feel like I'm meant for more, and I want to do big things. I just don't know what. Then it's for you too.
Mhm.
It's to surround yourself around women that are doing big things and that can lift you up and hold you accountable to doing those things, because you are who you surround yourself around. You know,
Mhm.
if you're just going to hang around with your corporate friends that just want to do that and don't see a bigger future, then that's probably where you'll stay. And so it's like creating spaces of expansion for women.
I love it. And can you just give us the link? I'm going to ask you all this at the end, but since we're in the topic, what is the link if people want to learn more about Illum?
Yes. So it is Illum Collective, and Illum is spelled ILLUME for illuminate, but it's illum-collective.com. All the information is there. We're also on Instagram at illumcollective.co. And I'm also on Instagram at Kristine K. Munro. And I think what you had said about like you being visible, I think it was really important for me to create a brand for myself to show who I truly was, instead of just the company of like, I share my story with my kids. I share my life. I share everything, not everything, but mostly everything, so that people can just see someone just being real and someone just being authentic in all aspects of life.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have of you as a successful businesswoman?
I think the biggest misconception is that because I've been doing it for so long, that it just comes easy to me, perhaps. And because sometimes people, it's so easy on Instagram to say like, oh, like you can just build whatever and it's easy for you and you're confident. I get so many women that say like, I just don't have the confidence as you, but then they don't know my whole story of I just shared here today. Like there was many parts of my life where I definitely was not confident. I had it in my career, and then my confidence was gone again. It's not it comes and goes depending on what you're going through in life. And even up until now, people may see like, okay, she's built the Illum Collective and she's living her purpose and she's fulfilled and all the things. It doesn't stop there. I still have down days. I still have hard times. I'm still doing things to push my growth. And that's what's the scary thing, is that I'm continuing to grow, and there's always going to be moments where I'm like, oh my God, I'm crying with a friend and I, don't know what I'm doing and all those things. It's just lifelong. So you're never going to get there. There is just like, I don't know where there is, but that's one thing that I've learned. Like I used to chase for that there, but that there is just a moving target all the time. And so now if you're not chasing for what's down there and you're just living in the now, fulfilled and grateful and all the things and loving the process, then you're there.
And if everybody who is listening had to do what you're about to tell them to do, and they have to do it in the next 24 hours, what would that one thing be?
It would be, like my coach said, to meditate every day. But I know that meditation is not for everybody. But the point is that if you can carve out even 5 to 10 minutes of your day, and I mean every day, and make it a non-negotiable, to be quiet with your thoughts, and whether that's driving in your car without the radio on, or walking without AirPods in, or sitting quietly, or doing a guided meditation, whatever that quiet time is for you. And if you could do it every single day, because I'm telling you, on days that I don't do it, I can start to fall off. Like, it's a practice, just like going to the gym. If you want a rock solid body, those people go to the gym all the time. You need to book that time in your day, every day, make it a non-negotiable.
I love that. I feel like everybody needs that. And if you can't carve out the time, I love the suggestion that you just made. It's just don't have the radio on in the car. Who
Yes.
listens to radio anymore?
I
Don't
know.
have the
Music.
podcasts. And
Podcasts.
turn off this podcast right now. No, wait. Before you do.
After this. After this book.
After this episode, turn everything off for 5 minutes. This has been amazing, Kristine. You have been so open, so generous with your story and your time. Can you please tell us where to go and follow you and where to find you?
I feel like I live on Instagram. My family would probably say the same thing, like, Mom, put down your phone. But yeah, I live on Instagram. It's Kristine K. Munro, or at illumcollective.co, or Pivot to Passion podcast.
I think that's the next thing you need to do is just go and subscribe to the Pivot Passion podcast. Since you're on podcasting app right now, just go and do that right now anyway. Thank you so much, Kristine. This has been amazing. We wish you all the best with your big, hairy, scary vision. And really, thank you for being so generous today.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved being here.